let's get to legacy players here for a second because I don't want to be the guy who rains on everybody's parade, but legacy players scare me for a couple of different reasons. It's today's tough question brought to you by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Let's make it the poll question, put it on the YouTube page. Are you scared of legacy players, excited, or just another prospect? Let's get that up there. Here's why I'm scared. I'm going to throw out some names, and they're in the column that's going to be on offthehooksports.com very soon. Here are a couple names. Khalil McKenzie. Number one, I watched Khalil McKenzie when he was a prospect. He was not nearly as good as his rating would indicate. I believe firmly that his dad and his ties to the NFL helped him get a little boost. I think it's you scratch your back, I'll scratch mine, or however that goes. And that you had that were able to use Reggie McKenzie as a source, so they gave him a little boost in recruiting. I believe that happened. I believe that happens with most legacy prospects because Caleb, let's face it, it's a great story to say, oh, Peyton Manning's son is going to Tennessee and he's going to be a quarterback. I mean, that's a great story. But here's the issue with that. What if Peyton Manning's son's 5'11"? Okay. You're not going to get a lot of play on a guy that's not at least a 3 or 4-star prospect. JP Peace is a 3-star prospect. So, Caleb, I think sometimes those guys get a little extra bump in recruiting. Not saying that's the case with Peace. I like his upside a lot. I'm just saying there's reasons to be cautious there. Now, if I told you you could go into a living room, get 2 prospects, one would be a solid linebacker, the other would be an All-American. They're twins. The other would be an All-American return specialist. Would you consider that a recruiting win?
I would say that. I would consider that a recruiting win.
I would too. And that's what happened with the Berries. But I think a lot of fans looked at the Berries, the younger ones, the twins, as a bit of a disappointment because they weren't their brother Eric, who was phenomenal, and they weren't their dad James, who was a very solid running back. So today's tough question is this: legacy players, love them, scary, just another prospect. Brought to you by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Today's tough question. Boom. You heard that. Now take it. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Okay, now Derek brings up a really good point. This is going to tie into Khalil McKenzie for a second. Derek says, did we miss out on the 2027 5-star edge rushing recruit because we took JP legacy recruit instead? I think there's a real concern that happens, that you place too much of a recruiting emphasis and resources on players. I believe from the get, and I'm not saying it because he was just okay in college and didn't pan out in the NFL. I thought Tennessee spent way too much effort in Khalil McKenzie. It almost seemed like he was a 5-star quarterback that you build your class around when he was a defensive tackle that should have been playing on offensive guard.
Okay, so I think a big part of what they do with legacy commits, and I'll be honest, and I know Butch Jones did this, it's to excite fan bases more than it is to actually...
We're going to get to that too. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's to excite the fan bases. Khalil McKenzie was related to Reggie and Raleigh McKenzie, who both were very effective, good players. And Butch Jones was selling it so hard that he landed him. Meanwhile, the crazy part, though, was Butch Jones didn't want T. Martin on his staff, which is hilarious. So he gives him a show interview to make himself look good. But now we're looking at Josh Heupel. I mean, J.P. Pieces, that's as legacy as you come, isn't it? I mean, on one side you have Robert Peace, and on the other side you have Philip Fulmer in your background. So JP Peace is as legacy as they come. But you are right. We're talking about a program that's not the only legacy that's not the only legacy person they've been picking up recently. As a matter of fact, just recently they picked up another legacy player, Luke Thompson, whose grandfather played wide receiver for Tennessee in the 60s, and whose uncle and whose mom and dad were track and cross country stars with Tennessee. But he's a 3-star out of Franklin. I'm sorry, Dave, I will say I try to give them credit for a talent evaluation, but I have a hard time seeing how Luke Thompson gets an offer like this if he doesn't have that legacy tie.
It's interesting because I wouldn't think that would be an orchestrated move by Josh Heupel. Would you? Like Butch Jones, when he took Khalil McKenzie and he made it a priority to get Khalil McKenzie over every other prospect in that class, trust me. And he made it a priority to get his rating boosted in the offseason so it looked better when Tennessee did eventually land him. I don't feel like Josh Heupel, he may be making the same mistake as taking legacy prospects to excite fan base, but I'm not concerned about that one because I don't think a lot of people got excited about a guy whose parents ran track at Tennessee. Now, with the J.P. Peace thing, he were to commit to Kentucky last week or Florida State that have shown interest, that would be a major red flag. I mean, there are some politics that go with this that are more than just can the kid play or not. And now with 115 prospects, maybe you have a little bit of wiggle room, and I think that's where they're going to get to. But I will just tell you that, and these prospects, they scare me. I look at a guy like Michael Munoz, and I know that his dad didn't play at Tennessee, but he stepped in and started 4 years at Tennessee. I didn't think he was ever dominant, and a lot of fans didn't appreciate him, and I can't argue with them because the pedigree and the ranking was so high. Same with Khalil McKenzie. If you move him to offensive guard, he's still playing in the NFL. But here's what happens. You make promises because they have leverage now. Caleb, so work with me here a second. Let me take a second to explain. So they have leverage because my dad played, and you're going to look bad if you don't get me. So you either need to give me money like Butch Jones did, and nobody knows about it, or you need to promise me that I'm going to play defensive tackle. So then you get 2 years in, and you realize he should be offensive guard, and you need him at offensive guard, but you can't move him because you promised him. They're just, I mean, to me personally, it's like doing business with your family. You're almost better off not doing it, but there's such a bad PR look when you lose. Let's say an Amari Rodgers, T. Martin's son to Clemson.
Oh yeah, and that it wasn't just losing Amari Rodgers. They lost T. Higgins too, and like right out of his backyard, and then they lost Trevor Lawrence, which made it so obvious that the program was imploding. I mean, that should have been Tennessee's Trevor Lawrence. It should have been Trevor Lawrence throwing to T. Higgins and Amari Rodgers at Tennessee, not Clemson.
Well, yeah, but I covered that crew really closely, and I always felt like Rodgers was the one that the heartstrings might pull him to Tennessee. I remember interviewing Trevor Lawrence at a camp, and it was just obvious he was befuddled by Tennessee and their lack of efficient recruiting for him, coaching. And I never thought that T. Higgins was going to come to Tennessee. I always thought Amari Rodgers might end up at Tennessee. So, I mean, that one hurt. I don't think there's any question.
Yeah, that one hurt. I totally agree. I also want to throw out and point out that it wasn't just Reggie McKenzie during the Butch Jones years, or Khalil McKenzie, excuse me. Let's not forget that he also landed Todd Kelly Jr., the Berry twins, Evan and Elliott Berry, Nigel Warrior, the son of Dale Carter. Everybody I just named, none of them lived up to their father. None of them. Not one of them was on the level of their father or older brother at that point. So that's where you somewhat have a point. Now, to be fair to this, I'll say this. Todd Kelly Jr., that was medical. He just could. He got a bad injury his senior year and had to give up football. So I don't think it was his fault, really. But yeah, you are right that legacy prospects, more often than not, don't work out. I mean, let's just go to the other sports real quick. I mean, Michael Jordan's son went and played basketball at Illinois. Nobody knew that. He never lived up to it. The Lakers tried to draft Bronny James. That was LeBron's whole thing. He wasn't ready for the NBA. He's never going to be on LeBron's level. So, I mean, it's kind of interesting how that all works out. The other point, though, when you say red flag,
well, at least Jordan's son salvaged it. Why didn't he sleep with LeBron's mom or something?
No. That would be
I
going too
thought
much.
I
No,
messed up.
Jordan's son started dating Scottie Pippen's ex-wife after Scottie
Oh.
Pippen publicly trashed Michael Jordan.
Oh, okay. Well, there's that.
Yeah. So there was all that. Yeah.
How do you even run in the same circles? I mean, you're 40 years different than it, or 20 years different. Go ahead.
Larsa's on a reality show. She knew it would be good for reality TV.
Oh.
And so, yeah, I think that one of the big, sometimes legacy players do often work out, but then you question, like, how deep does the red flag go with Tennessee, though, Dave? Because you talk about J.P. Peace, but I don't think Ole Miss is seeing it as a red flag that Lane Kiffin couldn't land Arch Manning. Are they? I don't think they are.
Well, that's hard for me to say because Lane and Archie Manning would have never been on the same page. They're just cut from cloth.
Totally different cloth. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, if David Cutcliffe's there, I think Arch probably goes to Ole Miss.
Okay, so maybe that's what it is. Oh, great point, Jimmy Stack.
50s or 60s. Right.
Great point, Jimmy Stack. Dylan Bates, a 5-star from Florida. Yes, the son of Bill Bates. So Dylan Bates, another one. Dylan Bates, this is all Butch Jones. Dylan Bates, Elliott Berry, Evan Berry, Todd Kelly Jr., Khalil McKenzie, Nigel Warrior, all legacy kids, all had a star rating above what they should have had. Dylan Bates shouldn't have even been a 3-star. He should have been a 2-star. This fuels your point, Dave, that maybe it was partially they were legacy and partially Butch Jones was calling services demanding that they add a star.
No, yeah, I'm not guessing that. I'm telling you that is a fact. That is hands down. He literally made 2 recruiting analysts quit their jobs because he berated them so thoroughly and giving guys higher ratings than they had, guys that he was after. Derek says pretty much risking missing on 2 players, a legacy guy, plus in hindsight, you could have signed a better player. It's like an NFL draft pick bust. Now, I'm not going to speak to the J.P. Peace thing because there's still a lot of time left, and I don't know that there's another guy they could have spent more time on. But I will tell you, as a fact, they spent way too much time on Khalil McKenzie. Way too much time. Now, I will give you another example. He would have been a star if not for coming along at the wrong time, having the wrong injury, and being prescribed the wrong type of pain medication. And that's Aaron Douglas. His dad, David Douglas, played at Tennessee. Aaron Douglas is one of the. I will tell you this, doing play-by-play, Caleb, when I watch football, I always watch the defense. I don't watch the ball. But when you do play-by-play, you have to watch the ball because you have to tell people what's happening. This guy kept coming out of my peripheral, and it was Aaron Douglas was just that good. He kept bouncing in there. The other guy was, I would say, Lee Smith. Now, Lee Smith didn't even make a practice at Tennessee because he got a DUI and got in trouble, and he had to go to Marshall where he got in a fight and got hurt pretty severely. So his career was sidetracked. But if you don't know, Lee Smith played about 8, 9, 10 years in the NFL. He had a solid career.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Another legacy that always works out for Tennessee is the Colquitt family. Every single Colquitt becomes good for Tennessee.
That's true. I feel like they could have a 5-year-old come over and he's kicking like 45-yard bombs. All right, today's tough question. What is it again, Caleb? We'll address that on the YouTube page. We want
is Josh Heupel recruiting too many legacy players?
Okay, I like it. It's brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. All right, Caleb, give me the trivia, the poll question. It's not the one I picked, but I'm just going to let you pick them from now on. You just take it over.
Oh, is Josh Heupel recruiting too many legacy players? 80% say no, 20% say yes. I am with the Luke Thompson one. I might be leaning on the yes, he is. Because I start to think that, look, legacy players are. I think the biggest reason, Dave, that a lot of them don't live up to the hype, it's not, do you think it's more the pressure of living up to their parents, or do you think they're just already overrated because of who their parents are?
I think they're oftentimes overrated because who their parents are. I also think there's pressure on them to perform more than the average prospect. I think that's a real factor. And I think some of that's internal pressure as well. Here's the thing that I think's scary about the guy that you mentioned out of Crossville and then JP Peace. Okay. What used to happen in December? You used to try to gobble up prospects so you could go into January with momentum because that's when you closed out your recruiting calendar, correct?
Correct.
Okay. That's changed. So June is the new December. This is when you want to start to pick up momentum going into July. You would much rather pick up momentum with a couple of 5-star guys. I don't care if they're legacy or not. Instead, you're dealing with a couple of 3-star guys. But that, I think, is a concern that we didn't really dig into. Is Tennessee doing its best just to generate momentum? Like those days when you don't feel like being at the gym and you just got to get through it. Are they having that sort of June? Because if they are, then they're going to have a bad July. That undermines their recruiting efforts. I just can't help but, I don't want to bring his name up every show, but I just can't help but think that the whole way the Nico thing was handled is continuing to have a lasting effect on Tennessee.
That might be possible too. But well, now Tennessee went from being the one that backs all the athletes and backs their power to the one that stands up to the athletes on the contract. So we're going to see how this plays out. Now the coaches, while the players were thinking Tennessee a year ago, now the coaches are thinking Tennessee for how they handle things. So we'll see how that plays out.
And listen, don't think for a second that all these recruiters out there aren't going to say, I'm just here to tell you that Tennessee can't pay their guys. Look at Nico. He left. Now, you and I know that's not necessarily true. And we really don't know what is true. Maybe that is true. But that's what the recruiters are going to be saying. There's no question about it.